Welcome, everybody. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us for our AI readiness session. My name is Emily Maritato. I'm the application manager for ambulatory. Go live with Epic is just 117 days away. Who's counting though? November 2nd. So we want to make sure that you all start to get familiar with these tools that you'll be using once you are live with Epic. So while this isn't a training that starts in September, it's meant to give you an inside look at how AI will integrate into your workflows November and beyond. So I think we can, jump over to the agenda. Quick readiness intro and guiding principles by myself and Dr. Bird. We'll go through an AI intro and overview by Mark and Evan. Mark and Evan will also do an ambient notes and orders demo. And then Evan will present on the agents and future of AI in Epic. Then we'll have a discussion and a wrap up. So with that, I will pass it off to Dr. Bird to go into our guiding principles.
Thanks, Emily. And thanks everybody here and who's online listening in. This is the beginning of what we're calling town hall meetings that we'll be having between now and when we get all the town hall information shared. And so we thought we'd start with this AI readiness one, but we will have some more town hall meetings to share information about Epic. And first of all, I want to be clear the purpose of these meetings. First of all, we just want to give our medical staff an awareness of how Epic will change your EMR experience at CGH. So that's number one, just to give you an awareness. Second, we want to give you an opportunity when you see this information to ask questions and make comments. So that's the other piece of the purpose. And then finally, I see the purpose of these meetings as an opportunity to better prepare all of us, but particularly our medical staff, for as you go forward now, pretty soon. How many days is it again?
117.
Not too many more. Pretty soon you'll be doing your provider training, user setting labs. You'll have an opportunity to play in the playground that Epic will provide for you, and then all that in preparation for go live. So I think these town hall meetings will give you an opportunity to better prepare yourself for when we go live. So from my perspective, the plan for these town hall meetings is going to be about every 2 weeks. We're going to have these until we feel like we've shared all the changes with Epic that may impact our medical staff. There, as I mentioned in the email I sent out, these are encouraged, but they're optional. I keep hearing over and over again, and Epic has data behind this, that those physicians, nurse practitioners, physician assistants that are most successful and most happy when Epic goes live are those who put the time in to prepare for that go live. That means time and energy into their training and their preparation, like 2.5 times more happy, 2.5 times more successful for those folks who put the time in. So for those of you who are on this call, I'm going to put you in that bucket of people who are willing to put the time in, prepare yourselves to have better experience when you go live. So that's just the overview of this. And then, I think a lot of you have seen this, but I'm not going to make the assumption that everyone has seen these guiding principles. So I just want to go through these briefly. And their first principle, and do the acronym as patient, as patients first always. A is that we're going to adapt to Epic and change only when needed. So Epic has what's called their foundation system. And we are, because we know that if we stick with the foundation, it makes it easier for everything to flow better. We are trying our best to keep with that foundation as much as possible. I believe we're around a 98 to 99%
Nice.
Foundation right now is what we're going to be taking on. So we're going to have to make some adjustments in terms of the times with our flow and how we've done things as we move forward. T is teamwork and trust. So I think this is part of that, these town hall meetings, just to kind of begin to understand and have everyone on the same page and the ability to communicate with one another about this. We want I is innovate, but don't revisit. E is experts lead the process. So as much as we can in our work groups and our councils, we're pushing down the decisions to those who are going to be on the front line making those decisions. And we only escalate them up as we can't come to a decision at those work group levels. We will end as we will never forget to measure and celebrate. And one of the nice things about Epic is we will have a lot more data and a lot more ability to measure how we're doing. And T is tradition and continuous improvement. So we're gonna CGH this, but we're also seeking ways just to improve and stay strong. Then the other thing about AI that's interesting is we decided we actually need a separate set of guiding principles just for AI. Just because it's this, you've read about it. It's this new thing that has different nuances than just your typical go live or rolling something out. So AI guiding principles, move forward with only trusted partners. So we talk about folks that will help us with this. Obviously, Epic is a trusted partner, but anyone who's going to incorporate AI who's outside of the Epic community, we're going to make sure we need to vet them very well, that we're comfortable with what they have to share. Number two, made a lot of sense to us is that we will use AI, but ultimately we're going to make sure that a human is responsible for the outcome. Number three is find practical solutions that add value and align with our mission. So you can do a lot of things with AI, but we're going to try to be more specific to those areas, at least as we get going. And then four is just be responsible about the implementation of this. Really, you're going to see in this demo some really cool things that AI is able to do, but we want to be responsible about as we move forward with it. So that is what I wanted to share. And I'm going to turn it over now to our Epic folks to go into detail with this demo. And I understand there may be some technical sides to this. We're trying to make it happen.
The demo itself is being prepped in a off-site location right now. So that'll.
Full disclosure, I mean, Emily did tell me, hey, this is going to be tough to do online. And I'm like, well, we just have so many of our medical staff that either are not on site, or if they are on site, it's hard for them to break free. Just try your best. So This is their best try to make this happen for all of you.
Well, and so thank you. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. Hi, I'm Evan Rogers. I work on Epic's physician wellbeing team. So I work with groups all across the Epic community on all things physician focused, efficiency, optimization, those sorts of things, ultimately helping groups build programs to take the best advantage of Epic as possible. My colleague Mark from our physician training team is the one who's just next door working through the actual demo, which isn't even planned for another 30 minutes in the talk. We're going to talk through some slides first, but just some comments on Dr. Bird's intro. I would say, sort of a +1 on the, sort of what you get out of it is a lot of times what you put into it, and doing the, not just going to the personalization lab to check the box and do the things that people sort of say, hey, build this thing and, put this filter in place, thinking through what are going to be those things that will help me, improve the signal to noise ratio of that big list of lists that I'm looking at. We see across the community, whether you're in Sterling, Illinois, or New York City, or Amsterdam in the Netherlands, it's going to be a bell curve of folks that, sort of on the happiness scale and how satisfied you are with it. And I think that's where using data to understand where folks are, that can really help us really sort of be the tide to raise all boats. I really liked both the sort of the principles of the project as well as the principles of AI, and there are a lot of commonalities between what you set forth and how Epic thinks about things. Our sort of tagline, or I don't even know what you would call it, our mission statement is do good, have fun, make money, which is easy to remember. I love that. But when we think about how Epic developed software and how Epic sort of came to be where we are today, it's always been with the patient at the heart. And so understanding that and also acknowledging that what we're talking about here and now today, artificial intelligence, AI, this is new for us too, right? This meeting itself, AI readiness, is a new thing for us. You're going to be one of the first groups who will go live. Like, you won't have sort of the pre-AI and post-AI. That won't necessarily be a thing for you all, and that has a ton of benefits. But it also doesn't mean that, well, I don't have to write notes anymore because AI will just do it for me. Well, what happens if the patient doesn't consent to be recorded, right? Those are things you'll still have to know how Epic works, how to write your notes, how to find the orders that you need, those sorts of things. So yeah, there are a lot of really great things that are coming, but also, take it with, not a grain of salt, but I would say I've been on the enthusiast and skeptic scale of AI. I started very skeptical. I'm probably a little more than half and half, where I'm getting more and more enthusiastic. And I've been talking about ambient voice recognition since there was a wizard behind the curtain, just an ambient scribe down the street or across the ocean. But I also have seen it literally save careers and save marriages and help people continue to practice when they were considering doing something else or retiring early. So we'll talk through a lot of what those examples are of how AI is embedded into Epic. We will show the notes and orders through ambient voice recognition. I believe you have some folks who are already using DAX today, but what that looks like embedded into Epic. And then we'll talk a little bit about what the future of AI looks like. If you've heard of agents or agentic AI, how Epic is taking that next phase of where artificial intelligence is going and applying that. This session will be 100% better if you ask questions, if you interject. I'm already sick of the sound of my own voice, so please, I'm not just saying that. And that also goes, I think, hope folks on the phone can hear us okay. Drop a line into the chat. Let me just make sure that I have that open for when, yep. But with that, any other final things that we want to talk about quickly before we go? Yeah.
Better than the voice recognition. So sometimes in those cases, I will take it out, and instead of having the patient go through and do ambient, I'll just talk it at the AI and say, this is all what we talked about, this is what we did.
Yep.
And then it makes a note for me anyway.
Correct.
But even in those cases, sometimes there's a workaround that way. I don't know if that incorporates in what you guys do.
It doesn't necessarily change any of what we're talking about, right? It's ultimately a privacy and a consent concern or discussion where there are some patients who won't and maybe never. Maybe sometimes it helps if you talk through. This just helps me write my notes so I can focus on you more than on the computer during the visit. But yeah, speech recognition, what I say is what I get. That's been around for decades now, and it's really, really good. And being able to build on top of that with what we call like natural language understanding, sort of taking what we say, deriving meaning from it, and then putting that into the pieces of the note. That's where all of these things are coming together to build. This is the note that I would have wrote, but I would have had to do it at 7:30 while I was watching the Cubs or Bulls game or whatever your favorite sports team is around here. So I think that's the benefit of it. But yeah, there are still some areas where it is so new and it's not always going to be sort of a slam dunk. Thanks for the question. Any other thoughts, questions? The recording lives at the vendor that you choose. And typically when patients consent to being recorded, they're consenting to the recording as well as keeping that recording at the vendor to help improve their models. Sometimes those things can be split. What I see most commonly is that groups are building that consent into the consent to treat at the health system. So just like I'm going to consent that you're going to query the surrounding health systems for care everywhere to be able to bring in outside data. So you see my past emergency room visits or my other notes or what, it's just one more of those. I am forgetting exactly what you do today for that, but yeah, I think we can certainly come back to talking through those different pieces specific to AI charting and ambient voice recognition.
I vaguely remember in the demo with Nuance, but they said that it was there, but then after 30 days, I believe it was.
That sounds about right. So it's not like it's kept indefinitely or anything like that, but yeah, it's typically the consent to record and then that consent to and this I'll jump back is Mark, whose blood pressure is probably, I don't know, up over the 200s right now as he's trying to work through so welcome, Mark.
Hey.
How we doing?
We're doing good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just keep presenting from this computer and we'll switch over here once.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan.
Once we get there. Do
Should
you
I
want to
introduce
say,
myself?
say hi, sit down, get comfy. Yeah, we're talking through a couple questions and here, if you want this for battery life, you can start there.
We'll figure that out in a second. Yeah. Hey, everyone. How's it going? Has it been going good so far? I'm sure it's great. We got some good people up here. My name is Mark. I'm on the physician training team at Epic, and I teach a lot of efficiency training classes. So you're 2 months after go live, how do you get through things as efficiently as possible? And I also teach Physician Builder, which is a program that we focus on getting more clinical engagement like this meeting to make sure that you have kind of an empowered voice and you know what is possible in the system. So I was really excited to be asked to be a part of this. I've been working on the last 25 minutes or an hour really is trying to just get Wi-Fi to get these devices to communicate with each other because we're not on our secure Epic network right now, but testing is good. So we'll be able to run through our AI demo in a little bit. The whole point is understanding what this is, how does it work, how can it benefit you, right? It's another tool in your toolbox. And if you understand how it works and what it can do to make your practice maybe a little bit more fluid, we want you to know about it and at least have the right questions answered before it gets rolling. So yeah, really excited to be here. And I think we'll kind of go back and forth and then we'll do a quick demo closer to the end and see what questions you have and just kind of see what engagement's in the room. But happy to be here.
So in my family, like in my life, I'm like the computer guy. I've worked at Epic for 15 years. Anytime we talk to the people who actually know how computers work and they're like, well, you have to check the IP address and then you have to go to this. And then I realize I really have no idea. I know how Epic works really well, but computers themselves, I'm still a novice. So let's just talk a little bit about AI, artificial intelligence. It is not a new thing since the 1950s and the Turing test to let's play chess against Deep Blue to how do we start to really teach computers how humans think up until recently. I don't know how many of you use ChatGPT like in real life or outside. Yeah. So the big advancement or technological change that happened relatively recently with ChatGPT is this idea of a large language model. So we can take the English language and we can put tokens on words, and you then can predict based on the words that have come up until this point and the words that what is the most likely word after that. And so ultimately we've taught computers how to talk like people. And so you can put in a question, a natural language question, which is, how do I find a nice way to tell somebody that they need to do better? And give it a little bit of context. That's typically what we call a prompt. That has been sort of the impetus for a lot of what we're going to talk about over the next hour. But AI or artificial intelligence isn't just one thing. Most of what we're talking about here sort of is on this far right side, or what we call generative AI. How do we generate text? How do we generate ideas? But artificial intelligence is also a rule, right? So if the patient is on this medication and we order this other medication, we want an alert to fire. That is one of the core safety features within Epic, a medication warning. That is in itself artificial intelligence, right? We're telling the computer what we want it to do. About, I'd say maybe a decade ago, they started coming out with these ideas of predictive models based on what has happened in the past for the patient. This patient is likely to no-show. This patient is likely to be septic. This patient is likely to whatever. And we learned a ton once we started going into those areas, things like show your work, right? If you're going to tell me that this patient might be septic, what are the different data points that you put together to synthesize that information? Things that you used to have to alt tab between all these different screens for, go to a bunch of different machines and pull all of that together to think, oh no, we have to do something different. So whether it is sort of our basic, just where we are more on the deterministic end of the spectrum or the probabilistic end of the spectrum, all of these things are AI, but really the exciting and sort of new frontier of what we're talking about is more on this right side.
So another way to kind of divide that up and actually picture that in practical terms is the sepsis data models, which can take in hundreds of data points and filter them into a formula. That's kind of the analytical side. And now we're more on the expressive side. I think one of the expressive side wins, which we'll probably chime on a little bit more, is with the patient messaging. It's a tool in Epic called InBasket. There is a short amount of time where you might want to describe some results that a patient has received. And when those messages start to stack up, that expressive side ends up getting a little bit shorter. And if you were typing everything out, the terminology you'd use is just based on how much time you have in the day, where this tool can be more expressive, can add vocabulary, it can make the patient feel more heard or seen. And there's been a lot of successful scores in the sent messages, or at least drafted messages, that are on this like kind of generated side are more empathetic, and patients actually receive them better. So if it's easier for you to write them, patients read it, like, you know, they have your whole full undivided attention for an hour to get this message. That's been seen as a win on the expressive side. There's a few different things that, as we go through some of the key wins, and again, our demonstration today that we're going to see live is really more focused on note generation and orders placement using the recording device, but accuracy, user experience, and ethics are kind of key drivers when we're trying to use this software, or, you know, as you start to kind of see it play a role in your upcoming work. These are three things you definitely want to have in mind. Is this actually making my job easier? Is it better for me to have this tool or not? I think about a lot of the tools that we teach in our physician builder program. We do decision support training, smart sets, preference lists, like all the tools that you need, what makes up a smooth work for you or workflow. If that user experience, if it doesn't match your needs, like it's not the hammer you need at that time, how can it get better? And so that's part of the vision from our teams, trying to synthesize all these possibilities and make sure that they're hitting the workflow areas that you want them to be in. So hopefully when we talk through some of those feature sets coming up, that does resonate with you before you've even used Epic for a long period of time.
And when we look at specific, whether it's a predictive model or some of the large language models that are driving these things, there might be some questions of, well, why is it predicting that X thing is going to happen? On the Epic user web, so userweb.epic.com, which is ultimately just our documentation hub, we have a series of documents called model briefs. That's where, for those of you maybe more inclined to data science, or you want to start understanding more about this to potentially do research on it or whatever it might be, that's where you can do the show your work epic at the highest scale, right? Or the biggest scale. So what was the academic literature that led to the development of these things? What are the different cited sources for, the p-values, for the probabilities for these different things? So, the mileage always varies across, the community. Nevertheless, just within a room of some people just want to use it and don't really care how it works. Some people want to intimately understand under the hood how it works. And, ultimately we hope that we'll hit, both audiences pretty well.
So when you take into consideration, or, when we're looking at all the different possible tools, these are kind of the four major categories that we've seen the different feature sets that we're looking forward to being able to integrate with and essentially provide you with the tools that you need in these types of different categories. So the drafting of text, that could be something that helps influence patient communication, using MyChart from patients and InBasket on our end, which should be kind of how we communicate back and forth. Generating summaries is another category where if you're trying to look at the last 10 years of historical data and you don't want to read through 50, 20-page notes from subspecialties, you can,
right? Because,
um,
the average chart is hundreds of thousands of words now.
Yeah, so those generative summaries are going to play a huge role in just kind of getting the things that you need. And we're already seeing some key movement away from standard tools that we've talked about and trained for the last decade. Now that we have these generated summaries happening, some of these other tools that have been kind of like cornerstone in Epic are kind of slowly starting to filter into we don't really use those anymore, which is definitely interesting for us. And as we give this talk even, it's reflecting on the past decade or more that we've seen these tools change. And it feels like we're kind of at a precipice for review, for note generation. Translating content, obviously, we're going to have diverse patient groups, and making sure that we have quick and seamless translation is a huge win for our patients. And then task automation, we'll see a little bit more when we think of the clinical workspace as kind of our main focus today, but there are dozens of other tasks that can help the infrastructure behind you, whether that's billing, other reporting, analytics tools, and help with the automation side. So this is kind of the four categories that we're thinking about when we are looking at which tools will land in where we need to kind of push them forward. We set timelines against those different categories.
So this is happening. It's happened fast. It will continue to happen fast at a very fast pace. So I think ChatGPT wasn't even 3 full years ago. And when that happened, it was immediately, how do we take this and figure out how to use it within Epic? With the scale of how big Epic is, we have over 15,000 employees. There are thousands of people like Akshay and teams over here that are focused just on, I already have this deep knowledge in my workflow area in healthcare. How can I take some of those 4 pillars that Mark talked about, but also we're now seeing, well, maybe you don't need a large language model for everything, and that takes a lot of time to do the computation. What about a small language model? What about a custom GPT that we can create that can do some of this work for us? All of that is sort of geek parlance and geek speak for, this is stuff that when we talk about this same stuff a year ago, it will be different. A year from now, 10 years from now, it will continue to progress. And it's not just the number of projects or the types of things, it's the actual outcomes. It's the change in workflow. It's getting people to coach soccer again, right? It's getting people home for dinner. The days of having to stay in the basement of the hospital to wrap up your charts on paper, those are long gone. But not everybody wants to chart on the couch while watching the ball game either. So how do we continue to find the areas that physicians and other users spend the most time and go at those with mindful projects so that ultimately we get to the space where it's now being published on, your peer group now are all of the top academic centers in America, nevertheless the world, right? They're already using these tools to great effect. And, as we start to think about what does that mean in the future, of course, we're very excited.
Oh, can I interject one thing?
Don't even have to
Yeah.
ask.
So I teach these physician builder classes. It's a whole series of computer science classes for providers. So the idea is that people that have been kind of really focused on an area, they don't feel like they're necessarily getting the support. We get all of them to come to our classes. We offer them in Verona, Wisconsin at our campus. We do them virtually. And we're teaching how to create note templates. It's a class that we've taught for a decade. This program started in 2012, so it's been around for a while. And in the room, you're starting to see it change where here's how to create a really nice note template. It has all these things to pull in current medications, diagnoses, recent results. And there's people that are saying, why are we doing this? Like, isn't this happening automatically? And in my last class, just to kind of give a percentage that's happening, in a class of 25 people, 5 people were actively on nuanced stacks, the ambient orders and notes we're going to show today. And everyone in the room is like, we finished a chapter, it was like a 2-hour lecture, and everyone in the room was like, do you like it? How's it going? And they're all like, it's really good. There's a few things that I would tweak, but when I get my note, I'm updating it in these 2 ways to make it work for what I need. And it was like the focus in the room almost switched from like us as presenters to the tell us what it's like. And their anecdotes were the same that you're seeing up here. So it's really interesting to see that play out in our classes that we teach now. Seeing that already, that map of who's using it is already growing, and we're starting to see the feedback come in. And so far, from my one-on-one conversations, it's been like a game changer. So
Just walk you quickly through, you might already be feeling like, oh my God, this is a lot. An hour from now, you almost certainly will be feeling like that. So what we want to do is we want to take that sort of big chunk of information and start breaking it down to help you better digest it. So starting with the Epic Executive Packet, this is a way that we help you understand at the highest level how well have you adopted Epic's tools to the point that Dr. Bird made. We now have the Epic Foundation System, which is an amalgamation, I was going to say, that's not the right word. It's how we've taken all of the best practices from across the Epic community and put them into an Epic system. Back when I started, you had to build Epic from scratch. Just think about that. There was no FAMMD. There was no cardiologist in there that you could just duplicate into whatever your people became. So over time, as we started learning, this is a 80-20 workflow. Well, the 80 goes into the foundation system, and we're only going to do the 20, when and if the time comes that has to happen. So ultimately, Epic is so big and so vast. There are always going to be new things that we want you to adopt, whether it's best practices or new features or some third thing. This at the highest level will help you understand, have we turned on all of the things? What do we do next? Go live is a huge event. It's, in some cases, the finish line. In a lot of other cases, it's the starting line, right? Because that's when, we'll start with optimizing the things that we've turned on. Well, this was a 60-40 or a 51-49. We just got to pick something, go live with it. And then if we picked the 60 and it was actually the 40, we'll make that change then. But getting to go live is, that sort of huge event. Also, just understanding specifically to generative AI or specific to an application like, maybe Hello World, a relatively new SMS or texting application. What does that thing do? How can we best take advantage of the things that are available to us so that we don't just turn it on, we're turning it on and we're utilizing it to great effect for our users and our patients. A number of different tools across, whether it's planning or adoption. So taking those very high level metrics that are in the executive packet and saying, okay, well, this is just a yes, no. Yes doesn't always mean yes and 100% use or yes and ubiquitous. How do we get to a layer deeper to understand where are our opportunities so that, it's not people don't know what they don't know, we can look at these different tools and understand what isn't being used and have a conversation with somebody to help them understand where are those different opportunities. I'll come back to governance and sort of decision making a little bit later, but a ton of resources directly from Epic. But what I would say here is within the Epic community, whether it's at conferences like UGM in the fall, XGM in the spring, learning from your peers and your colleagues at these other health systems that will now have had years under their belt of making these decisions. That's probably one of the benefits of being in the Epic community and standing on the shoulders of giants, so to speak. I mentioned the Epic User Web, our documentation hub. There's also forums. Maybe you want to crowdsource the answer to a question. You also want to hear from Epic, from your peers, not just at those conferences, but we have a monthly series of a number of different things. We also have series particular to AI to learn more about where things are and where they're going.
You want to see what questions people have?
Yeah, questions, thoughts, comments, anything from folks on the phone, in the room. Maybe lunch is hitting a little bit, need a little movement. That's okay. You can stand up and walk around.
Yeah. We were
I'm
going
a
to say
jittery guy.
on the drive here, if someone did have a question or a comment or something, if I don't know if you said this already, but if you tell us like which specialty you're in or what role you have, that'd also be helpful. I didn't really get to say hello to everyone here as we kick things off, but
okay.
How is it going so far? Is this like too much information, or do you feel like you're kind of getting a little bit more the scope of where we're at in time? Okay.
And all things considered, what a time, right? Like a lot of the things that have been rote, menial, over and over things that you have to do will be straight eliminated. But along with accuracy, ethics, responsible use of AI, there has to be a human in the loop, right? So when we're talking about, all of these features, making sure that it's safe first and foremost is of the utmost importance. But as we think about Epic and what started as, quote unquote, just an EMR or electronic medical record, and then grew into a comprehensive health record. That started when we went to Finland, and they said, "What do you mean you don't include social care in your EMR?" Like that is what we do. It is core to what we do. You have to know if the patient is housed. You have to know if there's food insecurity and what their home life is like. And that has now grown not to just that, and we're now expanding into different areas, in the larger health grid. So there are insurance payers that use Epic. I don't know if folks are aware of Cosmos, but Cosmos is a central repository, sort of another Epic environment that health systems can contribute their patient data to, and then use that data to do research on that information. That is something that will drive things like best care choices for my patient. So historically, when you're considering, should I get surgery? Should I just go to physical therapy? Should I, I would have that conversation with my doctor, and, we would try to make an informed decision. But having data at 5 years, 10 years, 20 years of patients like me who had to make a similar decision right at the user's fingertips, that's what this thing ultimately builds to. And when we're thinking about these projects, you'll see this little guy. We call that the bloom. That is your indication when you are in an Epic workflow, that this workflow, this text box, this widget, for lack of a better term, is using that generative AI to help you understand that this is something that was generated by the computer and you need to review it. But these different pieces that we're talking about sort of line up with all of those different, whether it's workflows or applications or not just health systems anymore that are using Epic. All of those are sort of fair game when we're looking at things like this, which is sort of the starter set or the sort of initial suite of generative AI projects. We have a slide later that shows sort of everything that we have live and are working on, and it's a lot. And groups came to us and said, help us boil it down to the blocking and tackling or the passing and dribbling, sort of those fundamentals, like where do we start first? And it's these. And these are the things that you all have lined up for your November go live, along with your owning work group and your stakeholders here. So we won't go through every project that's on the far left side of this table, this matrix, but just know that it's not just for clinical users. We'll talk about projects for operations, projects for rev cycle, analytics. It goes across all of those different areas. And in addition to that breadth, we're also continuing to build depth into all of these things. So based on the feedback from the users who are live, from the users like you all who are implementing and hypothetically, I think I would use it this way. That is really helpful feedback for our development teams to hear. And ultimately, at your go live, you'll have a whole team from Verona, Wisconsin coming down. Oftentimes, those are the people who are building the features that you are then using. So helping them understand this is great, but it could be better if we did XYZ thing, or you know what, this is great. Here's another area that I think we could apply this same paradigm to, that we could automate that task, or we could summarize this information in a better way at a different reading level, at in a different language, whatever it might be. So all that said, let's talk about the features in and of themselves, starting with AI charting with ambient voice recognition.
Yeah, so I'll be one of those trainers that are coming down here regularly too, by the way. So it's nice to meet you. I might see you all again. And I think as we get into the features and just start to talk through them, again, demo at the end, which will actually be the ambient voice recognition tool, is just what Evan said. It's going to be an interesting balance to, as a trainer, take our 4-hour training session where we go through how to find information, how to place orders, document diagnoses, make sure everything is documented the way that you want it to be, and integrate in something like ambient voice recognition. How does this play a role in documentation? So the idea, this is probably the one that people are most looking forward to, where we'll have a recording device in the visit with the patients. And one of the biggest changes for this feature is going to be narrating the things that you probably just memorized and had stored in your head until you got back to the place where you were documenting your notes. If it is that you're already using some sort of device, I think you're using Nuance right now, it's just not integrated, no copy and pasting. It's just going to flow directly into the note, and orders are going to be queued up for you based on what you said in that visit. So it's going to draw from preference lists that you maintain for your orders. You can order panels. We'll talk about what's in scope for which audience. And again, this is going to be kind of that growing area, but people are super excited about it. You already saw 6 million notes last month written this way, which we have a tracking tool that looks month by month and tracks how many users are actively on ambient voice. And this is definitely like the go-to.
The curve isn't linear anymore.
No.
And I wouldn't say it's yet ubiquitous, but we're already seeing across the community it being a competitive advantage for groups, it being a retention tool for groups. So the fact that you're going live with it from the jump is really great and exciting.
Next up, this is the AI extracted findings. So this is a specific example that we have some data for on the next slide. You can see the impression for Emily here. 5 millimeters solid lung nodule is identified. A follow-up CT is recommended in 3 months. What's the check-in on that? How did we get that back on your screen to make sure that it shows? Epic for the last 20 plus years has had our practice advisories, decision support baked into the system. Evan at the beginning side of this slide deck said there's deterministic versus probabilistic use of AI or cognitive computing. I teach builders like yourselves, if you became a builder, how to create decision support to catch this. But how many discrete data points or non-discrete data points, like a string message like this in a note, go unrediscovered? It's going to be a chance that someone finds this later on. So these AI extracted findings kind of supplement all of those written decision support guides that we still build on top of discrete data, but now it is being used in text-generated summaries. So this specific example for lung nodule findings, we have some data from Christ Hospital. 27 lung cancers have been identified in the first 2 months that would have gone unidentified without that follow-up CT. And the radiology staff, again, the data sets on these are also not just slide decks. They are published, they are validated. It goes back onto that accuracy on that earlier slide. So 4.5 times more lung nodules identified by radiology staff. Something like this saves patients' lives. And again, is something that's without this tool is really hard to write out in deterministic rule-based logic to be able to find every possible extracted finding. So that's a key area that's it's a life-saving AI function.
Yeah, and I think, you know, to no fault of the person who was reviewing the result, right? They're super busy reviewing, you know, result after result, and maybe you see it and you think, oh, I got to do something and I'll set myself a reminder or what have you. But what this is doing is it's taking it out, it's making it a discrete follow-up, and not just on new results. There's also plans to put this, you know, let's go back in time and look at all of the ones in the past. And did that CT ever get done? And, you know, when we think about sort of why we do what we do here at Epic, this is can literally save people's lives. And, you know, damn, that's cool. Yeah. In basket art, art being, you know, friendly dude down the street, also a acronym for augmented reply technology. I don't know how much of In Basket maybe you've seen or heard of, but think of it as our messaging system that is part task management, part communication management, where you will get those results. Where you'll also see communications between different clinical users, messages from patients in MyChart, et cetera. When the pandemic happened in 2020, you know, in-person visits just stopped, fell off a cliff. And along with that drop, an increase in patient messaging went up because do I need to come in? What am I supposed to do? Where other messages too also spiked, but patient messages didn't go back down to the baseline that they were at prior. It's convenient to message. I don't have to call and wait on the phone for however long. And in some cases, the fact that it's the lowest friction way to communicate with your you know, the health system or your clinical team, that is the beauty of living in the 21st century. But also on the clinical team side, that is overwhelming when patients have sort of that always open sort of thread with their clinical team. And so because of that increase in message volume, where groups asked us to sort of start with this, how do you understand the thread of a back and forth between the patient and the clinical team and draft a reply? That's what we're looking at here. So a lot of cool things at play here, which can't even really be summed up in the just a single screenshot. But we know that individual user's voice, right? So Mark mentioned earlier how oftentimes ChatGPT can score higher sort of on the empathy side or the bedside manner side. Well, yeah, it's easy to sort of put that thing in when you aren't logging in at the end of a clinic day and, you know, trying to reply to messages and, you know, being, oh, I'm so glad to hear from you, those sorts of things, right? But it can do that really, really well. It also takes into account, obviously, the patient's chart. It puts it in the user's sort of voice so that they say, yeah, that looks like something ostensibly that I could write. I mentioned earlier the idea of always having a human in the loop. You'll notice that there isn't any send button here, right? So you can either start with what Art drafts for you and use that as a draft. And you could just start with draft and then send, or you can start with draft. You can clean up a little bit of, the text there and then send it yourself. For the data science and the geeks in the room, there is this idea called Levenstein distance. It also applies to notes, where basically we compare. Here was the text as filed from the computer. Here was the text as signed by the doctor, whether it's the note or the message or whatever. And ultimately, we want that distance to continue to shrink, because that means that the models are getting better, both putting the message in the individual's user's voice, as well as getting all of the clinical things right. And it also takes into account, are you changing, small preposition words? Are you changing big ideas, clinical words? So those are the sorts of things that, when we talk about reporting, it's not just time saved. It's also the accuracy and the efficiency that we're getting based on using these tools. One of those other pillars that Mark mentioned is these tools are really, really good at summarizing text. Explain Moby Dick to me in a paragraph. I like to think of, man, if I was in high school now, I didn't even have to use Cliff Notes. I wouldn't have had to read Jane Eyre. Oh, God. And that's all well and good. But I think this is going to be one that, we're seeing a lot of very cautious optimism. But how can I trust that everything is in there? And how do I know that I'm not missing something? And that's where, we sort of see over time, people read the summary and then you go back into the thing and, you check, you can see all of these little hyperlinks. These are all citations to the individual pieces. Like why is the summary pulling that out? And where is the trend of those hemoglobin A1Cs to be able to say that it's getting better or not or whatever? And I think that's one where, it's very, very easy to write very, very long notes. Sort of in my other life at Epic on the physician wellbeing team, we have projects called Bend the Note Curve, Reclaim the Note. The average note across the Epic community is more than 6,000 characters long. That's a lot. And, oftentimes we see people just, scroll, just show me the assessment and plan or, whatever it might be. And I think this, with all of these projects, really has the opportunity to take that, what you used to have to synthesize in your brain, put it in a very simple, easy to digest way. And you can see whether it's just summarizing the notes for an outpatient visit, whether it's on the inpatient patient list, summarizing the course of a admission, what are the most important events that have happened in the last day, in the last 3 days, in the last month, because the patient has been in the ICU since then. That's where these tools, not just in and of themselves, are cool just as an idea, but they're flexible in being able to understand, what does this individual want to see? At what level do they want to see it? Just the bullets, or I want to get a level deeper. And that's where, on all of these too, you'll see these little thumbs up, thumbs down, icons, buttons. That's where we continue to learn over time how this is being used effectively. A lot of what we've covered up until this point has been sort of like physician or APP focused. Also have a number of tools for our colleagues in nursing. This is drafting and creating a end of shift note for care planning. Which is, again, looking at what has happened over the course of the last 8-12 hours and putting together that thing that, in the past has been, especially at the end of the shift, I've been on my feet all day and I just want to go home, I'll just type in a couple sentences. And that does, sort of a disservice to the person who's coming after me as well as to the patient. So how do we take what has happened, put that in a very easy place for them to start with a really good draft, right? We still need you to review it. We want you to add some information to it. We'll talk a little bit later after the demo on some of the other cool things that are happening with ambient voice recognition for nursing specifically. Couple more features before we get into that demo. Not all of these are sort of just in a specific workflow. Also the idea of how can we take a blurb of text, whether that's, in this case, it's in the note, but maybe it's in patient instructions. And I want to take that information that is written with a lot of clinical jargon, and I need to put that at a second grade reading level, or I need to put it in bullets because the patient has asked me for that in the past. And in the past, I used to do that myself because, I love them and I want to take good care of them. There's now this AI text assistant, again, where you can just find sort of through the Bloom icon. If you want to prompt it, you can, or you can use these pre-made prompts. Summarize it for the patient, at that reading level, in the future in a particular language, having it go through some of that review is something that's also really, really exciting. Just a couple, or a few, I should say, final things to wrap it up. It's not just in clinical spaces. For your Cheers campaign content, you can now use generative AI to draft what the wording of that might be, what those things might look like. For folks in the rev cycle, it could be help with professional coding. It could be help with appealing a denial. We also have tools in the analytics space. Hey, summarize this dashboard for me as the VP of Finance, or summarize this for me as the medical director in endocrinology. We've also embedded a natural language prompt directly in Slicer Dicer, which is Epic's self-service reporting tool, to be able to say, I don't know SQL, I don't know data models. I just want to see the patients who are overdue for their hemoglobin A1C. And not only can we do that, and it sort of shows your work. So if you want to go back in and build this in the future yourself, how you show your work, how you built the model, you can also act directly from those models to be able to send all of those patients a letter, a MyChart message. Hey, we need to get you in, into the lab in the next month before the end of the year, whatever it might be. All right, we are an hour in. I won't, we're not going to go through all of these, but within your different areas of expertise or your different clinical areas, it's going to be some of the things that we talked about. There'll also likely be projects underway that will also positively affect your experience. But the demo is always the sort of the big thing that people want to see. So we'll sort of get on with it here. Mark already covered the sort of high level, what are we talking about here? But just to recap quickly, Epic integrates with voice vendors, natural language understanding vendors. The groups that are most commonly used across the Epic community are Nuance, that makes DAX, and Abridge. And what they do is they take the recording and they parse that out into individual sections within the notes. So again, I think you all are doing copy paste today, and maybe it's just a big blurb. The beauty of the integration within Epic is that those voice vendors are smart enough to say, this is the section that should go in the HPI. This is the section that should go in the assessment and plan. This is the section that should go in the physical exam or the review of systems. Not saying that every physician needs to use all of those for every note. They might prefer to use a different tool like the note writer, the point and click forms for certain things. These things are modular, right? This is just another tool in the tool belt when you're creating your note. But to also the point that Mark made, if you don't say it out loud, you're not going to get it in your note. And it takes some, you got to kind of open up your mouth, because I haven't said my physical exam out loud in 30 years, if ever, right? So, getting used to that in order to get it into your note, but not saying that you have to, because you could prefer to use those point and click forms. It's all well and good. I don't think we really need to belabor this stuff too much, but yeah, I think in my 15 plus years at Epic, this is truly a disruption to the workflow. This is something that, 5 years from now, I think it's just going to be sort of the way things are. The enthusiast in me is, let's push the gas and let's make it 100% adoption. The skeptic in me wonders, is this going to be like de-skilling, and like self-driving cars? Are we just not going to know how to drive cars 10 years from now? Maybe, but maybe that'll be okay, and self-driving cars will be totally fine. We don't know yet, but I think that's where, when we talk about governance and we talk about how these decisions are made, a lot of groups are saying, we'll give it to everybody, but we're not going to give it to our residents. Definitely not our medical students. They learn the long way. Some people will even make them write it on paper still. Totally fine. That ultimately, that's your decision. We're just going to lay out the features and make it as easy as possible for them to use. And so with that, let's go ahead and show you what it looks like. So I am going to give you, those of us on the phone, are you in the Teams? Great. While Mark gets hooked up,
We'll just continue to use your audio.
yeah. While Mark gets hooked up, a couple things sort of at play here. He's going to be displaying both Epic Hyperspace, so our desktop application where you do the majority of your charting, as well as Haiku, which is the Epic app for smartphone. Ambient voice recognition is available today on iOS only. Android is currently under development and will be released before the end of the year. But for those who have a personal Android device, you probably need to wait just a little bit after go live. Any other stuff before we get started?
No, I think we're good.
All right.
So got, again, phone set up with the same provider and patients. This was my elevated heart rate 20 minutes before I came into the room. So some things I had plans for fun, I kind of just got back to kind of base scenario, but we made it work. And I thought that before we even got into just like do the demonstration, and Dr. Bird, I don't know if you wanted to be the doctor in our demo visit.
Okay.
That could be something that we try out. Just give like a 2-minute lay of the land of like, here's hyperspace, here's what the phone looks like. And then we'll just do kind of a mock visit, and anything you want to add in. I'll kind of tell you where these things are being driven from, and we can just kind of see what it turns up with. So first thing that we're seeing here, this is hyperspace. So this is the desktop application. As I'm getting on board with my schedule for the day, we have schedules, patient list activities that you'll all kind of get more familiar with over time. Inside of a patient's chart, we're going to use Juan here for heartburn. I'm able to get up to speed on some of the core things that I'd want to see, what has been done in the last couple of months for this patient, any recent visits, current medications, any current problems, and notes and other reasons for visit will be present on that schedule. Inside the chart, we have a variety of activities that will help us navigate. General layout of a chart is on the left-hand side. We call that the storyboard. Those are going to be kind of the more recent things that have happened for this patient. So you'd see recent lab results, if vitals were taken during the rooming process, which I don't believe we did here today, or maybe it did come in, which is good. So I could kind of scroll and hover over. These would be like recent visits, recent results, care gaps, things that maybe we should be thinking about in addition to today's reason for visit. And then we have a couple other things that's in a traditional training. I'd be talking a lot about chart review. That's the longitudinal history of this patient. I can look at all previous notes, encounters, medications that were placed. And you'll notice that we have the little bloom icon here. So we have the heard and visit recording. That's going to be one element, just to know that for this generated visit, any orders that were placed are going to be available. Now, one of the challenges here with this screen, because I'm kind of demoing through a remote desktop, which is a little interesting. The other thing to note is that orders are always available at the bottom, but if we're going to get that through the audio component of this, we don't have to place orders manually. It's always there for us if we want to. But before we even get started with a quick office visit demo, the orders that we are querying against, the things that it's going to listen for and try and queue you up is going to be based on preference lists that you have. Either user preference lists, those stars or things that this person has favorited, or also system preference lists. So if we're placing orders, and again, this is something that I had built in a different demo environment today. I had created an anemia test panel. So if you create panels, you can queue up panels of orders. It doesn't have to be individuals. Those are available in this model. And then the other thing to note as kind of our landing spot after we do the quick recording is we have this ambient note template on the right. Other note templates still exist. If you wanted to free text everything in, you could. But the ambient note template is built in with what are called smart sections, and they receive that information coming back from the recording vendor, and that's where it seeds in those different parts of the visit. So this is Juan's chart, and a couple other things that I would note. I'm going to switch over to the phone view. On the top left, there is this little recording icon as well. So when you start recording, this becomes active. If you're recording on the phone in a chart, that is not the chart that you have open. It like flags you right in the top left corner saying, you're recording in a different patient's chart right now. And you could do that, but it lets you know that right away. Also for the final order entry process, you'll see kind of a confirmation of patient. That's where we're going to come in a second. Same provider over on the phone, same patient's schedule. So here I can see, my schedule actually from today. We're going to use tomorrow's encounters just for today. But I'd be able to search against my schedule, look forward. The phone as kind of a key to a few different workflow areas. Patient refill requests, people use the phone for that. Quick messages back to patients for the in-basket. That's going to be really good. Also, if you're ever doing image documentation, you would do that directly through the phone. Images don't get saved to the phone, get stored on a cloud and is available for other people to see on the media activity right away. So the phone we could use to place orders and do all the other documentation. However, the demo is for the nuanced DAX, right? So this is what you'd be looking for. Bottom middle of our screen, I can tap on the nuanced DAX Copilot. And before we start the recording, do you want to point out here, and you'll see this in a slide, there is a embedded resource center in the app itself. And as a trainer who's being asked to create training content for this, I love that this is in here. It's actually really well done. It tells you what to look for, how you know if you're recording, strategies for actually seeding this information into your note and where it ends up. So it gives you some strategies. I would definitely explore that. It's a quick and easy read. So if you
Actually, I'm gonna have Dr. Coons as our medical
Doc-
staff.
Perfect.
President do this, and he also uses fax already.
Okay. So one other thing that is not going to be in our demo output for this, but in the standard note template that I had built out prior to it, there is kind of a suffix at the end saying that because consent was confirmed by the patient or whatever that terminology actually is. So we can start the recording, and any orders you want to place, you can treat me like a patient here for heartburn, ask me questions, and we'll go as long as you want to go, and then we'll record it.
Okay. Is it all right if we record today's notes for purposes or the visit for making a chart note?
Absolutely.
Okay. You may hear me say some things out loud that seem funny, but it's for the purposes of getting into the chart note.
Perfect.
So, we'll work with us on that. So, great to see you here today. How are you feeling? What brings you in?
Kind of okay. I've been having heartburn. It's getting pretty bad, so I wanted to come in and get it checked out.
Okay. Tell me about when it happens and what makes it better and worse.
So usually I feel a little bit more when I'm trying to go to bed at night. That's when it really feels irritating. Maybe it started 4 days ago. I felt it in the past a few times, but I felt like this last stint has been getting worse.
Did it ever happen when you're active or exercising?
Well, I don't exercise that much, to be honest. So sometimes when I get up and start walking, I feel it a little bit more, but I don't really do too much intense exercising.
What's the most activity you've done in the last few weeks?
Probably just a few walks around the block at night.
You didn't feel it then?
Not so much.
It doesn't radiate to your jaw or arm or?
No, it's just right here,
Just
kind of
right
in
there.
chest area.
Any foods make that better or worse?
Obviously I tried to avoid spicy foods, but it's still kind of hitting me at night. So, tried to change a few things there, but it's still not working.
Any medications you tried?
Nothing yet.
Okay. I know you have sore knees in the past. You still on that naproxen from before?
Yeah, I'm still trying it. I'm still trying to take it.
Pretty often?
As I think it's how much was it prescribed for? How often should I be taking
Twice a
it?
day.
Okay. Yeah, I probably probably do it twice a day. Sounds about right.
Right. Does the heartburn get worse after that?
No, not that I can.
Okay. No vomiting, blood coming out of anywhere, or anything exciting that way?
No, nothing exciting.
Okay. And, any Tums or anything like that seem to help, or have you tried that?
I tried Tums once on like the first day. It didn't really help that much.
Okay. All right, well, we're gonna check you out. So I'm gonna, lay you down here and push on your belly. Does that hurt?
Nope, not there.
Okay. How about we push over on the right side?
Oh, yeah, felt it a little bit there on the right side.
Is that the same place that this happens when you get the heart?
Yeah,
thing?
it's kind of like that upper right-hand side is where I noticed it, and then a little bit in the center too.
Any greasy foods make that better or worse, or does it not matter much what you eat?
Not really. Yeah.
Doesn't matter too much. All right, and if we have you lift up your legs, doesn't make it hurt worse at all, or,
No, that feels okay.
okay. And you're not feeling lightheaded or unwell in any other way, no fevers, chills,
No fevers.
none of that. Okay, well, we're, since you haven't tried much, maybe we'll just start with something simple like, Pepcid that you can get over the counter at the pharmacy. If that doesn't work, maybe we'll move on to something called a proton pump inhibitor like Protonix as the next step. And you don't have any allergies to any medications, right?
No,
You have a preferred pharmacy.
just the one down the street.
Okay.
Actually, I heard about no, it's a separate thing.
All right, do you have any other questions for me today?
No, if it doesn't get better though, is there like a next step if I try the Pepcid and it doesn't work? Is there something else that I can kind of think about in the future?
Yeah, you can go into my chart and send me a message and well, based on your request, since we've already talked about it, we'll just go ahead and plan on if, 2 weeks, this isn't better, sending in that Protonix and we'll take it from there. If it's still not getting better or it's worse, or you have any blood coming out of anywhere or anything exciting like we talked about, then we want to hear from you right away or
Okay.
to the emergency department.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I'll start off with that over the counter stuff.
Okay.
All right. Very nice.
Yes.
I was not a well-prepared patient for it, for this event. Thank you so much. So, a couple of things to note for the orders. At this point, it's going through that transfer process. The check for orders now is going to refresh. You could see that it automatically kind of pinged that request. Is that okay.
Yep, and you also, so this is specific to the fact that the ambient recording was done, but we also have those pop-up notifications for patient is ready to be seen, patient is ready to check out, and we put in the individual user's control for what events do you want to see those pop-ups for, because some people love them, some people don't, but ultimately that's one of the things that you can personalize and control.
So the orders on the left, again, these are single click items that could include order panels as well, but these were driven from the preference lists that were available. So it's convenient that we had those in the preference lists. Again, didn't talk about that beforehand. And then over here on the right, the ambient note template is the one that is going to bring in those quote unquote smart sections. So it parses through the recording and we can see that output over here. Now, the actual sectioning of them, again, that's part of this smart section structure in the note template design itself. At this point, the note is also editable. There is a core smart link, which is what you'll learn during your initial training too about the no vitals taken during this visit. That is kind of one of those standard smart links that we still want to have included from the rooming staff documentation. And there are a whole tray, there's a menu of those types of links that you could also decide to embed into your ambient note template to supplement these generated blocks of text. Other things that I was hearing about in my physician builder class when we had those 5 people stand up and say, well, here's what I like to do. There was a couple people that were still doing some copying and pasting from here, really again, double checking the outcomes of each of these sections. And then in the little drop down arrows, there's also the feedback to say maybe you want to have the output change. And so one of the providers in our room was spending a lot more time trying to generate and get that draft to be where they want it to be. And they've seen the week by week progression in this structure. So again, from a speed and accuracy, trying to make things exactly how you want them to be. I think even this quick demonstration in a few weeks, we can kind of hone in on different details to make the output match your needs.
And a lot of times I like to throw people for a loop, and I would have been like, hey, Dr. Coons, did you know that lunch was in the, I thought that was kind of cruel to do in this, but it does a really good job of sort of parsing through what is extraneous to the conversation and omitting that. But in the same sort of breath, I also hear from pediatricians, it omitted that kid's favorite video game, or, the fact that, the parent was incarcerated, or things like that's the stuff that I have to know. And we'll show in just a second. Was there anything else that you wanted to show here?
Unless there was questions about the note content or anything. I mean, even the advised to contact the clinic via my chart if symptoms persist or worsen. Like it's pretty incredible at parsing through that and getting things in the right location.
And there's also the ability for you to go into DAX settings, like for things like social history, for things like, this is how I want my physical exam structured, because they by default will put it in prose format. Some people might like bullets or numbered lists, those sorts of things. That's also in your control, and those things that you can basically tell the model, here's how I want my stuff framed. But yeah, I think all things considered, this is sort of the like, oh my God, moment that we're at right now. What a time to be alive, y'all. All right. But I'm going to flip this back over, and apologies in advance for, you'll probably see my fam.
Clarification.
Yeah,
for sure.
okay, not my family. Baby Yoda drinking tea.
Pepsid, yeah.
Sign off on the order. They agreed with that. Or if
Yep.
they wanted to add one, they would just type it in the orders tab on the bottom.
Correct. So based on what is on the preference list, we pulled in, so it's a tiered lookup. We start with what's on the patient's active med list. Oh, you're going to refill the naproxen that they were going to talk about. Let's start with the naproxen that's on the list, not the naproxen that's on that preference list. After the patient's current med list, then we go to the preference list and we say, here is the most common iteration of the Protonics, whatever, take it however many times per day, dispense however many pills, however many refills. Neither of those were selected by default, right? That's the human in the loop part where the doctor still has to go in and say, this is the one that I want. And if I want to edit next to the Protonics where it had the information about the route, frequency, dose, that sort of thing, they could go in and edit those. And if they say, oh, by the way, we should just put in that referral to GI just to have it in there, that's where they would go to the standard ordering box within Epic and just put in that order, et cetera. Oh,
Teams.
oh, yeah.
With using this a little bit, it's important to know that DAX is very good about picking up asynchronous stuff and filtering in where it needs to be. Sometimes there's things you don't want to say in front of the patient, patient's disheveled, they're pale, they're whatever.
Yep.
Or all the vagaries of your exam. It's perfectly okay to end or pause the recording when you're done with the patient, go into in your office and start it up again and say, the patient looked like this. These are all the things I'm concerned about that I really didn't want to talk about in front of the patient, and just dictate it in there, and it will reprocess everything and add that into your note without, and insert it where it needs to be, not necessarily, an addendum at the end or something like that. That's a really handy function to keep in mind, that you're not really limited to what's ambient in the room.
Correct.
Also leverage that in different ways.
And we also see it on the front end too, of before I go into the room, physicians doing a quick blurb on, sort of the background on the patient as well.
Following up on this, and this, the docs will then figure out that that's the order that I want my diagnosis in. So when maybe this is not so important with Epic, but with copy and paste, I have to match up the order of my codes that I put into NextGen with all the different parts of the plan in order. And if I prompt it in order in the beginning, then it tends to follow that and it's much closer. So I'm not having to move things up and down and around.
One other thing I wanted to, because we're running short on time, just to clarify, because I see this next slide. My understanding is, so the orders would just be for ambulatory to start with.
Correct.
I also, my understanding is that for the ED and our hospitalists, they won't be able to kick the tires until we go live. So that DAX will not be available to them until the day of the go live, because something about Cerner, it doesn't connect. So if that's incorrect, okay. All right, so just for those folks who are in the ED hospitalist world who are listening to this or want to convey that to others, that's my understanding as of right now, how that's going to play out.
And for those of you on the phone, I don't know if you could hear Dr. Bird, but the point was that if you're working in the hospital or in the emergency department, there is not a possibility to use DAX, ambient voice recognition, today with Cerner. So that'll be one of the benefits of going live with Epic in November. All right.
And the other thing I wanted to clarify with that orders.
Yeah.
My understanding, and help me if I understand this correctly, is that like order sets and those type of things, are those going to be?
Those are not yet
Okay,
integrated.
like for Dr. Sheriffs, who's one of our cardiologists, if he has like an order set for someone who he sees in the office and he's going to set them up to have cardiac cath done. I'm not sure that all of that will be embedded into the ambient speech to begin with.
Not to begin with. So like the whole admission, yep.
So the training of how to get that in there and to take the time and the training to get those order sets right is going to be, because the
Correct.
ambient speech will not necessarily allow that. It's more the one-offs that Dr. Coons had the conversation about that'll be populated.
And we can get creative with building, like, as you can see, these order panels. So there's something we can do, but it's, yeah. We'll get creative. All right. And I know we are at 3 minutes, so I've also been over here hiding some slides. But Mark quickly showed this, but directly in Haiku, you can get into the DAX, basically their idea of personalization. So in that way where, if you wanted to not just learn about things, but also you wanted to personalize to say, I do care about the patient's, video games or those sorts of things, you can set those up directly in Haiku. This is sort of the highest level, all of the things that are going on with ambient voice recognition. We've already talked about notes and orders. The integration, Dr. Coons mentioned this a little bit, but right now we break out in the assessment and plan sort of blurbs of text per diagnosis, but it's just text. What we are actively working on is tying those sub notes, so to speak, within the assessment and plan discretely to the condition so that it shows in the problem list for those discrete assessment and plans. That's what we in geek parlance call diagnosis aware notes. Happy to go in depth with that separately. And then we are also now figuring out how do we take the conversation, and whether it's the the colonoscopy in the lumens module or the periodontal chart in wisdom? How do we take that conversation and start clicking those buttons and start putting in, the different discrete places in the anatomy of the colon or on the specific tooth? That is actively underway as well. Won't have time to get too deep into nursing. That is very, very exciting from a workflow and efficiency perspective, but also very, very early in that historically voice and speech recognition hasn't been a nursing tool. The physical location, where are we going to do it? Am I going to say this in the room with the patient? That might be weird. Am I going to do it at the busy nursing station? We're learning a ton about that, but it's also then moving into areas like education, tasks and reminders, etc. This whole meeting has been a lot of this, right? Like, how are we implementing this? How are we trying to set appropriate expectations? How are we getting ready to do, to go live along with AI? Bevy of tools available on the Epic user web, available in the Epic community. Stand on the shoulders of giants, reach out to your peers. They're doing the same sorts of things as you. Again, for those of you who might be interested in things like, how did this model come to be? Is the model drifting over time? The AI Trust and Assurance Suite can help you answer those sorts of questions, along with, a suite of reporting tools to say, how is it working? I would also just call out one of the benefits too of being in the Epic community is having a direct line to the research and development team, having them hear your feedback directly, hosting them for immersion trips after go live calms down. They'll be down here for go live, but then hosting immersion trips, having those open lines of communication. I won't show the video on AI agents now, because I know people have to be somewhere probably 5 minutes ago, but all of this is going to this agentic AI framework. If people want to hang around for a minute, I'm happy to show the video on the screen. But all that to say, come to UGM, users group meeting. You won't be able to walk 5 minutes or 5 feet without hearing AI or, seeing something about it, which is an amazing thing. You'll hear presentations from your colleagues in the community about what they're doing and what they're learning. I know we're a minute over. I am happy to go back and show the video of what agentic AI kind of means. I'm also happy to let your brains rest a little bit, because I know this is a lot, but any thoughts, questions, things that you wanted us to cover that we didn't, things that you want to see? We're hanging out. Correct. Yep.
So, enough about me, moving on to you, and it reliably ignores that every time. So just keeping that in mind, that part of your conversation can also be prompts in the to direct it in real time that way.
Great point.
Well, hopefully,
Just wanted to
yeah.
mention Real quick.
Yeah.
Sorry for the group.
You're good.
Dr. Bird will send out invites for our next town hall. He'll send that out in the next couple of days. So you can be on that.
Good.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining. We'll hang around for a bit if you want to come up for questions, watch the video.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.